Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Lost with Friends. As always, I'm your host, Paul, and have a returning guest with me this time. Go ahead and introduce yourself, sir.
Aloha, friends, once again. My name is Kevin Zane, and glad to be back one more time, back to back.
Yes, for those unaware, we are recording this moments after just finishing recording with Esteban for the homecoming episode. So now, anyone who listened to that episode heard the little bit that you guys had wanted to tell a humorous story, but now this time I want to get into the nitty gritty of it, Kevin. How did you get into Lost and find out about Lost 2014 and all that good stuff?
Well, the short answer is I got into Lost because of a girl. As so many of us get into interesting situations because of girls. This girl who I was seeing at the time was a big fan, and this was in between the time between season 3 and season 4. And she actually tried to convince me to watch the show, and I was like, at first I was real hesitant, didn't want to really get into it, hadn't heard a lot of good things about it before talking to her. And so she lent me her DVDs, and I was like, you know what? Give me something to talk about with this girl or whatever. Let me dive in. And I guess pretty common stories that once you hit Walkabout, you're kind of interested to see where this is going to go. So I kept going and I kept going. And at the time I was working midnight shifts, and it's midnight shifts in the winter, and it was a little dead, I believe. And so that gave me a chance to bring my laptop into work, and got a lot of downtime. So I would just watch episodes, and I think I killed all 3 seasons within a few weeks. And actually, at one point, had my boss looking over my shoulder. She's like, and she was a Lost fan. So she kind of didn't come down on me too hard for watching Lost, because she enjoyed the show too. So she's kind of looking over my shoulder watching. And we were getting a little busy. It wasn't quite downtime, and it was the end of season 3. And if you're listening to this, you probably know how big of a moment that was. And I had obviously been looking forward to it. And I actually took my laptop and went into the men's room and watched about the last 15 minutes of season 3, kind of letting everybody know my work ethic might not be the best in the world. But obviously I was hooked from there on. I remember the first scene I watched live was season premiere, season 4. Yeah, so it was basically, long story short, all because of a girl who lent me her DVDs, and then I had something to watch. And we don't really talk anymore, but obviously I need to thank her for bringing this show into my life. I can never fault her for that.
Nice. So how did you find out about the event Lost 2014, the giant fan gathering?
Oh, man. It's a good question, because I don't really remember. I think I might have been following Joe Garfine.
Right.
When she had started to promote it. Or you know what it was? I found out via Cancer Gets Lost, because I followed Cancer Gets Lost in their auctions that they had previous to Lost 2014. And then when they started promoting, saying, oh, we're going to be hosting an on-site auction in Hawaii, I was like, oh, okay, well, I kind of have to be a part of this. And it's funny because in 2012, I believe, was the first Cancer Gets Lost auction. And I bought a poster for somewhere between $100 and $200, something like that. And it was a rare poster promoting season 6. And I'm looking at it right now. It's hanging up in my house. An amazingly detailed poster that I've never seen elsewhere. And when I got to Hawaii, when they hosted the on-site charity auction, and one of your guests that you've had on will remember this, because we got into a little bidding war because they had another one. And I'm a selfish bastard, as I mentioned in the last episode of Lost with Friends, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And me and Jake got into a little bit of a bidding war. And that's actually how I met Jake, because I hadn't met him prior to that. and I wrote down my bid, and he came in and wrote in his bid. I wrote a bigger bid, and he wrote a bigger bid. And luckily, he was trying to bid on about 100 things, I think, so he kind of forgot about the poster, and I ended up winning it. So now I have two because I'm selfish, and I didn't want anybody else to have it, and I thought I had a one-of-a-kind item. Turns out I have a two-of-a-kind item, but I have both.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, and, apologies to Jake. I've apologized to him many times, but he did end up with some cool stuff. And I just thought it was cool that I got into a bidding war with a guy. He wasn't writing Jake on the paper. He was writing Jacob. And I'm getting into a bidding war with a guy named Jacob.
Now you and I, you mentioned it in the previous episode that you had noticed me on Twitter, but you and I didn't really meet, I think, until the giant party that Jake threw, the hotel party at the end of the event, right?
Yeah, well, I didn't even show up to that because like I said, Jake probably didn't want me around at that point because I had outbid him for the poster. But I know Esteban was there, and I sent him a tweet and was like, "Hey, where'd you guys end up? If there's an after party or whatever." And he's like, "Oh," and I should have asked him about this when we had him on, but he's like, "Oh yeah, we moved from the hotel room. We're down to the beach. We're right across from the ABC store."
Oh, jeez.
Which, yeah. So if anybody, for the people who were there or anybody who has ever been to Hawaii, there's an ABC store on every corner, and I'm not making that up. It's literally, yeah, every corner there's an ABC store. So he's like, "Oh yeah, we're on the beach right across from the ABC store." But I did end up finding you guys, and it was actually on the beach. We were all kind of sitting around in a circle. Well, the rest of us were sitting. You were standing because you don't like sand, I believe, right?
Correct.
Yeah, you didn't want to sit on the beach with us, so you were standing kind of like holding court while the rest of us were just kind of laying around in the sand.
I actually discussed that with someone that I had as a guest, how at the waterfall I didn't go in to the water there. I didn't go into the ocean or anything. I barely even wanted to go onto the beach, and it's not because I'm like afraid of water or anything, but I am a huge germaphobe. I don't like dirt. I wash my hands about 20,000 times a day. And I decided that this time when I go, I'm going to say screw all that, and I'm going to just try to enjoy myself. So the next time, if I'm, and you're my witness, and anybody who's listening to this, if I'm just standing there while everybody else is sitting, just like tackle me into the sand.
Oh, be careful what you wish for, my friend. Be careful what you wish for. Because I'm the kind of guy who will do that, and I'm going to hold you to that.
But yeah, one of the memories that I have of like when you and I first like got to talking, it was actually, we were sitting in I believe it was at like a picnic table or something like that, not far from the beach. And it was you, me, Jake, and I believe Jake was there, and a few other people, and we just kind of stayed up just sitting there talking about all sorts of things until I think it was like 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, it was the sun was about to come up. I'm not saying the sun came up, but it was about to come up. It was a good about 5 o'clock in the morning, and it was 8 of us who sat around that table for the most part. And you guys are the 8 people who I've kept in contact with, and it was good for me because prior to coming out on the beach, prior to sending Esteban that tweet saying, "Hey, where'd you guys end up?" I was just sitting in my hotel room. Like, the one friend who I came with, originally I was supposed to come with 4 friends, ended up just being me and one other friend. She passed out. She was asleep, and I'm just sitting there kind of twiddling my thumbs like, I getting down to the wire here. Lost 2014. It's coming to an end. What am I going to do? I got to hit somebody up. I got to do something. And I'm glad I did, because I ended up making some real good friends out of that, just the 8 of us who sat around that table.
And then actually a few of us, because I believe Jake and Esteban went home that next day, but then you and I and a few other people, we all just kind of hung out the next day. We went to the church, and we just hung out like all day.
Yeah, I hadn't been to the church. Like I went to the two tours that were officially part of the event, but I knew there was so much more to be seen, and I spent the next couple days there. And otherwise, again, like I said, it would have just been me and my one friend that I came there with. But well, I was lucky enough to develop friendships with you and the others, and had a nice little group outing, going to different filming scenes and stuff like that on mopeds. Well, mopeds was the day after we kind of walked and bussed around
Yeah, I that was
the
the
day
day.
you were with us.
Yeah, the day that we walked and bust, like I was there. I wasn't there for the moped day. I was on my way home then. But I do remember that at one point, I believe it was you just had your phone out and you were on, I want to say probably lostvirtualtour.com, and we're just walking around going, "Oh, in 5 steps there's this filming location." And like we went and we saw where the bridge that Jin and Sun meet for the first time. We saw the building, spoiler, the building, something to do with Locke. I won't say too much, but you know what I'm talking about. And
Yes, yes.
we just
We
we
have some good pictures from that, I believe.
yes, but yeah, that was probably, and it wasn't any because the official event was done, but that was probably one of the best days that I had there, was just hanging out with you and everybody else, just going to just random places that we were just like, oh, that place is right over there. Oh, and that's, not far from here is where this was filmed. And just hanging out with you guys was just, like I said, probably one of the best days that I had there.
Yeah, we walked a lot. We definitely logged some steps on our Fitbits that day. Ended up hopping on a bus at one point. Um, it was just very. We went to a place where Christian meets up with. I can say Ana Lucia, right?
Mm-hmm. You can say
Yeah,
whatever you
I
want.
believe. Yeah, that doc where they end up meeting, or at least it was a doc in real life. I forget if it was portrayed that way on the show. Um, yeah, it was a real good time, and definitely planning on doing similar stuff. Maybe some other places that we didn't manage to get to.
So when I hit you up and I said, hey, would you like to do this show? You graciously said yes. And I said, what episode would you want to do? And of course, anyone who is listening to these in order knows that you said Homecoming first, but you also said Outlaws. Was there a particular reason you wanted to do this episode?
There is, and we'll get to it because it contains probably I don't know if I want to call it my favorite scene. Definitely one of my favorites, but probably my most watched scene ever because I've watched it so many times on YouTube, and I just reference back to it for people who may not be familiar with the show or the scene. But we'll get to
Okay.
that.
I'm I'm intrigued. Um so yeah, if there's nothing else, I guess we'll just get right into the episode. My opening note is Sawyer's childhood, where his father kills his mother, and then the father commits suicide right in front of him. That's it. I mean, very intense scene.
Yeah, I made my note just says it's a heavy moment. It's not graphic per se, but it's a very heavy moment to start off with. This I think most of the episodes were TV-14. This was definitely a TV-14 episode. Um, just a very heavy moment, but then they follow it up immediately with a lighter moment, trying not to bring you down too much, I guess.
Yes, the boar in Sawyer's tent, and then he runs off with it, and then he's chasing it. Like,
Yeah, definitely a light moment there. You're going from like, oh my god, this guy just shot himself. His dad just shot himself in front of him. Like, and then all of a sudden he's chasing a boar. Like, all right, let's try not to weigh too much on your emotions right just yet.
and then I have in the jungle he hears whispers, which of course was introduced with Saeed, and Jack wanted to know about them at one point, and now Sawyer hears them.
Yeah, so it's kind of a roller coaster there at the beginning. Big, heavy moment, light moment, and then you're like, ooh, what's going to happen next? And then kind of teetering back on your way back up the hill there.
I have that Saeed, not the first or not the last person, but the first person in this episode to make fun of Sawyer for a boar taking his tarp. And Sawyer once
Yeah,
again calls Saeed Muhammad.
yeah, yeah. He's good for that. Let me go back 1 second though
Okay.
to because I won't get a chance to reference this again probably. Sawyer's dad when he's banging on the door and his mom is telling him to hide under the bed. Sawyer's dad sounds, and I don't think it's actually Josh Holloway doing the voice, but sounds just like Sawyer in a much later scene. I'm going to say season 3. I'm going to say The Brig. Sawyer gets locked into a room, and it's got open this damn door. And
Oh.
yeah, it's very. I don't know if the lines are exactly the same, but very very similar. Vocal inflections telling him, the person on the other side of the door, open this damn door.
I never picked up on that.
Yeah, I was kind of proud of myself for thinking of that.
That's yeah. I mean, I've said it several times in this podcast series. One of the things that I love is every time I watch the show, I find something new. This time, talking it over with my fellow Losties, maybe I'm saying something, or like this time you're saying something to me that next time when I go and I watch it, and I'll be like, he's right. It does sound, not that I don't believe you, of course, but I'll be like, I remember that he said that.
Yeah,
So
and it's kind of like once it's in your head, it kind of becomes common knowledge. Like again, that's just something I picked up on this time. It's not something that I knew about prior to this. Just a little something I picked up on, kind of like right in the middle of the last episode. I said, Charlie's doing drugs, Claire's getting injected with drugs. There's a little juxtaposition there. It's something I never had thought of prior to us being in the middle of conversation.
right. And I have going, about Sawyer and Saeed. He called him Muhammad, but he knows that he needs info on the whispers. So when Saeed's like walking away, but Saeed can't believe it until Sawyer hints that he may have heard the same whispers. But then Sawyer won't admit to hearing anything either.
Yeah, Sawyer's doesn't want to let his guard down, so to speak. Doesn't want to open up too much. He's still very much playing that outsider role, that person who doesn't belong.
Right. And he actually says that later on, if I'm not mistaken.
He does. That's why I said it.
In the flashback, Sawyer is just about to bed a woman, but an old friend of his is already in the room, and he even comments on the fact that that's pretty awkward.
Yeah, Hibbs says, let's stop this now. And then they reference the Tampa job. And it's interesting to me because it's one of the unsolved mysteries of the show. Like, it's not something that needs to be explained. And apparently, go ahead.
No. I was going to say, I actually do have that. I have apparently the Tampa job is a huge mystery to fans to this day, but I don't understand the fascination.
Yeah, I don't think there's a fascination with it. It's just a little nuance of the show to mention something, and it gets people talking. You know what I mean? And like, oh, is that ever going to be referenced again? No, it's not. It's just, it's not necessary. It doesn't have to be referenced. Although, in doing my research, it did say that there was a deleted scene written, maybe not filmed, not sure about that did reference the Tampa job in a later season 1 episode. But again, it's not something I hang on, and it's not something that bothers me. It's something I actually enjoy, is that they reference the past of these characters, and you don't need to know what happened. They sum it up nicely in 3 words.
Right. I do have one note right before they mention the Tampa job, though. I have that, if I'm not mistaken, the woman who Sawyer was with is the woman who reads the lotto numbers in a few episodes from now.
Really?
I could be wrong, and I know somebody will point it out online if I am wrong, but I'm pretty sure that it's the same woman from the news thing who reads the lotto numbers.
Very possible. That would kind of. Do they say where they are when he's in that hotel room?
I don't
I don't
believe
think they
so.
do. Yeah, I don't think they do, but we know Hurley is in California, so that would kind of give away Sawyer's location. Well, you know what? Has to be California because he flies directly from there to Australia, right?
Right? As far as we know, yeah.
Doesn't have doesn't have to be, but he was going back to LAX, So, and that would make sense if she's the lottery girl in California. So, makes sense to me. Don't know if it's true, but I'll roll with it. It's true to me
Yeah.
now.
And I have the fact that Sawyer threatens, that if he ever saw Hibbs again, he would kill him. And Hibbs says that Sawyer isn't the killing type, which is pretty ironic considering why Hibbs says that he's there in the first place.
Yeah, well, he's going to put that to the test.
And then Hibbs just lays out the entire. I don't know if this would qualify as the MacGuffin for the episode, but it's the whole reason for the episode. The fact that Sawyer's passed. Now they found this guy. Or, he says they found this guy, and now Sawyer can get his revenge.
Yeah, for a con man, obviously it says something that Sawyer must have been pretty close with this guy for James Ford, the man James Ford, to open up to Hibbs enough for Hibbs to know this story.
Right.
Kate just kind of finds out about it, by happenstance when she, sees the letter. But obviously it says something to, at one time at least, how close Sawyer was with Hibbs for him to even know about the history there.
Right. Well, I think it's kind of funny though because knowing what we know, we as the audience we should already be picking up on the fact that something's wrong here because by the end of the episode we find out what it is, but something doesn't seem to fit because on the island Sawyer still has the letter. And he says about the fact that I said if I ever met him I would give him this letter and blah blah blah. So now something, to the astute viewer, something should be going off in your head going, wait a minute, if this is the right guy and blah, 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 then Sawyer shouldn't have the letter and James Ford shouldn't have the letter anymore.
Good point. So we know something's going to happen. Something's up. Either
Right.
he ain't going to do it or, obviously what ends up happening.
And I have this note specifically, and I know he wasn't on this episode, he was on the previous episode, but specifically for Esteban for when he goes back to listen to this. The guy who he goes to see in Australia, we see the picture of him here, definitely a guy from Grey's Anatomy, which is a show that Esteban and I share in common that we love. So that one's for you, Esteban, when you're listening ever. I have Jack and Kate talk about the survivor's point of view on where the guns might have come from, which I think was just the writers telling us, this is the story, let's not turn this into a huge thing.
Yeah, and they tend to do that a lot, and I'm fine with that. And something I've noticed, you tend to break it down and what was this character's motivation in doing this sometimes, and I've heard you ask that question, and it's a matter of discussion, and it's always a fair question to ask, but a lot of times it's just, yeah, I think the writers just kind of wanted to knock that one, scratch it off the list, and that's there more for them than the sake of the character.
Right. That's a fair point, yeah. I have that Kate says she can get the gun back from Sawyer because she speaks his language, but previously she seemed repulsed by the idea that her and Sawyer could share a connection.
Well, little hard to get there, maybe.
What do you mean?
On Kate's part, because we see they obviously do end up sharing a connection,
Right.
Not just later on, but even just in this episode. So it's a little bit of a maybe Kate trying to think she wants to go straight, and he's the bad boy, so she doesn't want to feed into that too much. But they are connected now and forever.
I have Jack says he doesn't want Kate to get the gun back anyway, which of course is really just him saying, I don't want you to make out with Sawyer again.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. He's getting a little possessive, uh, possessive and protective. I'll say a little bit of both.
Definitely. I have awkward scene between Charlie and Claire. Charlie seems to not. I know that it's, in a moment we see that it's because he wants to bury Ethan, but he just seems to be distancing himself once again. Something traumatic happens, and he's just like, I'm gonna, as Saeed tells him a little later, like, there's no reason for you to act like you're alone. But he does that, which he wants so badly to spend time with Claire, but yet now when she's like, "Oh, hey, let's talk, let's go for a walk," he's just like, "No, no, no, I'm busy. I have to do things." It makes no sense.
Uh, he's kind of getting right in his own head, I think, and that was the point of including that. You got somebody who just killed a man, and he didn't so much do it for himself as he did for someone else.
Right.
So he's battling that, and they do mention that, and at the same time, I think he does realize, with his best intentions, as I again will argue for Charlie, maybe she just needs some space. He's trying to work it out. He's got some dark stuff going on in his head. It's like, all right, maybe it's better to just separate a little bit.
Okay. I have the fact that Sawyer's on the hunt for his tarp, and upon finding the tarp, he hears the whisper, "It'll come back around." Now, this is my question to you. Obviously, we might get into a giant spoiler thing for anybody who's, first time listener or casual listener, but knowing what we know about the whispers, do you think that was him just hearing something on his own, or do you think that was actually what the whispers were saying? And if so, how did they know that?
Well, the way the whispers work, we're told straight up what they are late in the series, and it's never made clear whether the voices or the whispers that you're hearing are people who actually have been to the island, or if they're just kind of in the person's head. I mean, it's kind of hard to say, because if the whisper is in fact coming from the person who actually says those words, which within the context of the show is plausible, although that's not necessarily what I believe.
Okay.
The island works in mysterious ways. I don't know.
No, I mean, no.
The short answer is I don't know.
No, I hear you. I wanted to get your opinion on that, because as I'm watching it back this time, I'm going, wait a minute, something doesn't quite add up here.
Yeah, and I might have, I watch with the closed captioning on, so I see immediately it tells you right in the closed captioning what the whispers are saying. So it's obviously deliberate, and at the end of this episode, we do see why. But as far as explaining it as a foolproof explanation, yeah, you ain't getting it from me. Sorry to say.
No, like I said, I have no idea either. Like you said, the island works in mysterious ways. I was just curious as to what your view on that might be.
I will say that there are some very nice visuals, as in this scene, this specific scene where Sawyer is looking for his tarp. The way it's shot, it's kind of a low angle looking up at Sawyer and looking up into the sky, and you see the trees. Very, very beautifully shot sequences. If you go back and check this out, you get some nice scenery.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and they do that from time to time.
Well, I mean, it's kind of hard to not make that place look beautiful,
Yeah, yeah. But this specifically, like, I don't know whether it was the time of day that they were shooting or something. It just really stood out to me. Like, there's obviously nice beaches and everything else, but just him trekking through the jungle looked particularly beautiful to my eye.
I have, about the fact that the whispers say it'll come back around, and then the boar comes back around, and then Sawyer gets to use his catchphrase, son of a bitch.
Although I don't think they were specifically referencing the boar in It'll Come Back Around, although obviously it fits. Um, Sawyer also says, I've got some revenge to tend to. And that is obviously a theme, reoccurring theme for his entire existence, it seems. He's always got some revenge to tend to. And I'm sorry if I'm stealing your thunder for your next note.
No, actually, it wasn't. My next note is now Kate is making fun of him about the boar too.
Yeah, and it's when you make yourself an easy target when you're chasing a boar around and acting kind of irrational about it.
Right. I have that we see a standard shot of Australia to let us know where we are. Because, like,
We
other
are
than
in
that one
Australia.
shot, there's, like, nothing to really indicate, hey, Australia.
Well, I think the Australian accent's about to give it away, though.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah,
Um,
and we meet Lawrence. I had to look up his name. Right? Is that where we're going from here?
yes.
Yeah, and go ahead. Do you have any notes on that?
No,
I'll let you read it first.
I just have the fact that the guy I didn't know his name. Lawrence, you're saying now. He gives Sawyer the gun and basically tells him that he has to be sure of what he wants in taking this gun. That's all I really have on that scene.
Yeah, and that scene, like, it's not something that stands out. It's not one of the best scenes of the show or anything. However, it does strike a chord with me, and I don't want to get too personal. But you mentioned the Jersey coming out in me in the last episode. In Jersey, you tend to find yourself in some situations from time to time, and that's a speech that was given to me at one point in my life, my younger days, not recently. I will say that much. When you have a gun or one's pointed at you, you really got to consider, who's holding it and what they're really willing to do. It just rang true for me without getting, again, too personal. Things like that do happen.
Understood. Is that the scene you were talking about at the beginning?
No, no,
Okay.
that's not the scene.
Okay.
We're
I'm
getting
I'm curious. I really am. I have that Charlie and Hurley go to bury Ethan. Hurley basically talks about zombies, but I never noticed it, but I remember reading that apparently the body appears to breathe or the hand moves or something, and that led to speculation that Ethan would somehow, or he was somehow alive. I watched it and didn't see movement at all. Maybe I'm just missing it.
Yeah, I think people who say that might just be seeing what they want to see. There's no guarantee that was even a real body underneath that tarp.
Right.
And but Hurley does mention rising from the dead, which, yeah, little foreshadowing there. Not necessarily zombies, obviously, but definitely a little rising from the dead going on.
Well, I think it's funny because the casual fan might not know, but anyone who's a diehard like we are knows that constantly the writers would joke about the concept that they were going to do a zombie season where everybody who dies over the course of the show would be able to come back and whatever. So I thought that was kind of humorous there.
Yeah, and again, a lot of the things they say are just to play with the viewers' emotions.
To be honest, though, as fans, we knew they could have said basically anything, and the entire internet would have like dissected every syllable that they said it. Like the exact inflection of their tone and everything.
Yeah, and again, I didn't realize it at the time, it was happening, but I'm glad that I did pick it up halfway through, and I did get to experience season 4, 5, and 6 live, because going online and talking with friends, it really made it a lot more interesting. And having to wait that week in between episodes definitely made it a lot more interesting than, say, if it were to come out today on Netflix, where you're just breezing through the whole thing and you just immediately have all those answers.
I agree. I only watched 5 and 6 live, and I didn't really interact with many people online. But as someone who also, you binged the first few seasons, you have to admit though, it was pretty great when they find like the hatch at at the very end of All the Best Cowboys Have Daddy Issues, and you could pretty much within just a few hours what that is. I always thought
Oh
that was
yeah.
pretty great.
Yeah, and especially from what I've read, the three last seasons somewhat suffered from this, but nothing like what I heard about the first three, where it's like, okay, 1 week you might have an episode, then you got to wait 2 more weeks for another new one, then they maybe get one more after that, and then there's another short break because they were behind with the filming or whatever it was. From what I understood, it was very sporadically aired,
And if I'm
which
not
adds
mistaken,
even more to the suspense.
the first 3 seasons had, but the last three didn't have Christmas breaks. So that's like
Right,
two,
yeah, because
3 months with no new episode at all.
yeah, because 4 was during the writer's strike, which is why it ended up being so short. And they started it in January, and I think they kind of picked up from there. It's like, okay, if we start in January, it just happened to be because of the strike, and it worked out better for them. And I think they also did that for the last two.
Right. I have Hurley asking Saeed if he got the Gulf War syndrome, and Saeed says that was the other side. That makes me laugh
That
every
was the
time.
other side. Yeah, good line. And again, it's Hurley trying to be smart, but he in his head he knew what he was talking about.
Right. He's,
He knew
definitely one of my favorite
PTSD.
characters in terms of, just the fact that he tries, and he's not like, we talked about it in the previous episode, and I've talked about it a few times in the series overall, but the fact that like Boone pretty much fails at every attempt at everything he's doing. Charlie sometimes tends to fail when he thinks he's doing the right thing, and it ends up making things a little bit worse. A lot of people don't like Kate for the same reason. But I think Hurley has, I don't know, there's just this aspect about him where even if he messes up, it's just like, yeah, but it's Hurley.
Yeah, and I definitely would like to get on any Hurley episode in the future, because he is my favorite character. And if I had to pick one character to meet, it would have been him. It would have been Jorge Garcia. So I was very fortunate at Lost 2014 that he was the one who accepted the invitation. So just throwing that out there. Maybe not this season. Move on to season 2. Definitely want to get in on a Hurley ep.
I will definitely keep that in mind. You know what? Actually, I do want to ask you, though. You mentioned in the previous one, I don't know whether I'll keep this in or not, but you mentioned in the previous one about the fact that you and Esteban both had the shirts that, like, he wore. One, what was his reaction? And two, which one of yous met him first to get the better reaction?
I made sure I met him first. And I don't know if Esteban realized that, but I'm not an anxious person. Like I'm usually very casual, very laid back. Like if I have to wait in the back of a line, my last name begins with Z, so I'm used to waiting in the back of the line. I've done it all my life. However, in this case, once they said, okay, everybody start lining up to meet Jorge, boom, I was there. I was, maybe about 20 deep in the line, but when you figure that there's 200 some people there,
right?
I made sure I was ahead of him. So if he did have a comment or a laugh or anything about the shirt, then it was going to come to me first.
Fair enough.
And I remember looking back in line, just making sure he's behind me, right? Okay, yeah, he's back there. And but as it turns out, it was all for naught because I don't think he said a word about
Oh, really?
it. Yeah, if he did, I don't remember it.
Right. Um, I have Hurley mentions Charlie shooting Ethan 4 times, one of the numbers, but as we commented on in the previous episode, that may not be accurate.
Yeah, there were. I'm like 90% sure there were 6 shots that went off. And again, if we want to play devil's advocate, we could say only 4 hit him. So
Because, like I said in the previous one, I counted 6 as well because I rewound it. Rewound it. It's a DVD. You don't rewind a DVD. Um, but I went back and I'm like, I need to count this because that's except for that one instance in the previous episode where you guys got me. I've noticed almost every instance of the numbers so far when rewatching it this time, and I went, no wait, how many times did he really shoot him? And I had counted 6 shots as well. So yeah, but I like your theory of you know maybe only 4
we'll
hit.
go with that, and we'll also go with Hurley wasn't there, so he might just be hearing the urban legend of 4 shots. Then again, he was handling the dead body, so that also goes to my point that he only hit him 4 times with 4 of the shots because Hurley obviously was there with the body. So
Right.
there we go. Another little thing I just thought of.
So glad I asked you to be a guest for real.
Well, and we're about to get into it here. From my comments, like I'm listening and I'm critical. If I hear something and I pick up on something that you guys are talking about, I'm going to voice my opinion. You know that, so.
Yeah. No, that wasn't sarcasm. I'm like you're coming up with these things, and I'm like, this is like when you like in the previous episode, you and Esteban just went on. I don't even know if now that I'm saying it, I don't remember if it was part that I'm going to leave in or that I'm going to cut. But you guys were just going back and forth and back and forth, and when that kind of thing happens, I just sit here sometimes and I'll just kind of lean back in my chair. And because I'm just so thankful that I got people that can carry the conversation, and that can generate great content like that, because I love to listen to everybody that I've had on, and they're giving their opinions on the show and whatever. And when there's 2 people who can just go, and it's honestly like I'm just listening to a conversation with like I'm listening to the podcast pretty much, so I just sit back and I just love listening because I'm just like, yes.
Yeah, and I realized that was happening too. And at one point, when Esteban stopped talking, I was just like, all right, I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to give Paul a chance to jump in here. It's his show, and we just went for a good 5 minutes, just me and him. So I did kind of pipe down and give you a chance to jump back in. And it's great how this one show, like all these years later, can still bring people from all walks of life, from all over the planet, literally, together and just talk for hours. Like you said, we were out on the beach and then the picnic table until the sun came up, and we're just sitting there BSing about Lost. Pretty crazy.
Yeah. I have Sawyer tracking in the jungle, and Kate follows him this time because he was following her a few episodes ago, and she mentions how he's maybe following Boone or Charlie, and then she goes on to list like everything else that he's followed, including himself.
Yeah, and you got somebody has no experience, just gonna walk around the jungle, follow whatever he sees. It makes sense. She's like, you need me, and she loves that. She loves exercising that little bit of power over him, because not just because she wants carte blanche, as she says. She does have an end game, but I think she also genuinely enjoys it.
Like playing a mind game with him, you mean?
Yeah, just and knowing that he's not going to get what he wants without her. She now feels like she has a purpose, because she always wants to have a purpose. She always wants to get involved. She's always wanting to come along, and now she sees like, okay, he's struggling and I can help him. and I'm going to hold it over his head a little bit.
Right.
Because he kind of did that he did that to her. He was holding something over her, so now she's very much enjoying the fact that she can get one over on him.
Absolutely. I have later that night, they start drinking, and he calls her Sassafras, which isn't really a nickname, but it kind of is in the sense that I count almost all of his nicknames.
I
And
actually Googled sassafras to find out exactly what it was, and it's a tree or a plant or something like that. So it doesn't make sense in that sense, but it's his way of calling her sassy.
right. And then they start to play I Never. And I have many notes for
This is
that.
my
But
scene, Paul.
okay, go ahead.
This
You
is
want
my
to?
scene, buddy.
I'll let you take over then.
Um, it means something to me because this is a game I've played many times throughout my life, since back to my teenage years, and I always loved playing it. We called it Never Have I Ever, and I previous to seeing it on the show here, I had never heard of it called just I Never, and I think that's maybe something the writers did to simplify it, because saying never have I ever over and over again might get a little confusing. But I love this scene when people who I've talked to and come across who've never heard of I Never, this is the link I send them. And every time I send them the link, because it's YouTube, it's like 3 or 4 minutes long. It's been out there forever. I've used it many times, and that's why I said this is probably my most watched scene, because every time I send it to somebody, I end up watching it beginning to end. And like I said, it just brings up a lot of memories because we go back to my teenage years and drinking games, and then college years, whatever else. And they mention, I know you never went to college, because if you did, you would have heard of I Never.
Right.
And that's why I think it was very early episode of yours, it was like episode 3 or 4, you and Jake were talking about a deleted scene and kind of going back and forth about whether Kate went to college or Kate's college experience or something like that. And I am literally listening to this, screaming at my phone, come on, guys. Kate didn't go to college. We've established this. And obviously this scene didn't stick out to you or Jake the way it did to me. But I know Kate didn't go to college.
It's funny, though,
because it said off right here.
It's funny, though, because like I remember, because I believe you commented that on the YouTube thing. And I remember thinking, okay, but, and at that point I'm like, do I want to? I'm like, I don't know if he'll take this as like me starting an argument, and I want him to be on the show one day, so I don't want to like say anything to him. But no, because my basic thing back at you, I didn't say it to you, but was that as he said, it was a deleted scene, and I believe maybe I ended up cutting it, but I believe he also commented about the fact that since it was a deleted scene, obviously it never came to pass that she went to college, because presumably if that scene had stayed in, this would have been rewritten. And then also mine was just because I started joking about the fact that was the prequel spin-off that I wanted, was Kate in college. And honestly, I just thought that was too funny to cut out because of a technicality.
Yeah. And to be fair, it's never established 100%, because that she didn't go to college. But I just thought it was funny that you went on this whole thing about Kate in college without mentioning this scene at all. And when it's the scene that stuck out most in my mind, and like I said, I'm literally like listening to you, and it was Jake, right?
Yes, it was Jake, yes.
Yeah. All right, I'm listening to you guys talk. I'm just like, come on, guys. Come on. So I had to leave that comment, and then, once we talked about what episode I'm doing, I was like, this episode right here, because I want to talk about the I Never scene. I have a lot of history with this scene and the game in general.
Maybe if we have another party when we're in Hawaii, maybe we will have to play this game.
Yeah, and I kind of had that, I think, in the back of my head going into Lost 2014. I was like, all right, if we end up getting together and going out drinking one night, we're definitely playing a game of I Never, just because for the sake of the show. Didn't end up happening. And actually, I was looking through Strahan Bookstore in New York City not too long ago, and I'm in there looking at books. But what caught my eye was a box game, or a game in a box, or whatever, board game, not really a board game, card game in a box that said "Never Have I Ever," and that's what I ended up buying. I didn't buy any books that day. I bought the Never Have I Ever game. It's still sitting in the corner, unopened right now because I haven't had a chance to play it. But from as much as I can tell from the box, it looks sort of like a Cards Against Humanity type game using Never Have I Ever. So maybe I'll bring that along if it doesn't weigh down my luggage too much.
There you go. So I do have a few different things, and I actually one of my first notes is he mentions her never going to college, which calls back to the Walkabout podcast episode because I was kind of hoping you'd bring that up so we could talk about that a little bit, and we did.
Absolutely.
And I'm sorry because I honestly it didn't stick out to me at all at that point of like, oh right, they did establish like in the back of my mind somewhere I knew that was the case, but my whole thought at the moment was it's you know what I mean, it's a deleted scene, and as I believe, like I said, I believe he said it where it was like obviously she didn't go because it was a deleted scene or whatever. And I just thought the joke of Kate in college was too funny.
Yeah. And in the moment, obviously, you're not really thinking that far ahead of one scene, one little line from one scene. It just stands out to me again because it is one of my all-time favorite scenes from the show. I definitely put it top 5, honestly. Just it's my personal preference.
Okay. I have in this game of I Never, they set up several future storylines and episodes, which you don't realize it until you know what I mean, until it actually happens.
And again, like as you're saying, it's not just an entertaining scene, but an important scene.
Yeah. And then in the midst of the game, they exchange looks with each other and start getting personal with the nevers. And she says about, I never blamed Boar for all my problems and this, that. And I don't know what it is, but it seems like after they exchange this one set of looks, all of a sudden they're like, I'm going after this person now.
Mm-hmm. And trust me, when you're playing this game, that's how it gets. Like if you're playing with some close friends and you might got a little dirt on them, they say something about you, you're going to come back even harder when it's your turn.
Okay.
I mean, that's just how it goes.
Yeah.
And I will say, they're playing with little airplane bottles of booze. Those bottles lasted a long time. Those bottles in a game that I play, those bottles wouldn't have lasted that long.
Well, that's I like his comment when she says about like a one night stand or whatever, and he's like, "Do I have to drink for every one?"
Yeah, again, like funny, important, just overall a great scene.
I also have that the lack of music so often, especially in the early episodes, until Jake called me out on it. In the early episodes of the podcast, I would talk about how the score it makes the whole show. They always said there was like 12 or 13 main characters every year, and then like the 14th was the island and the 15th was the music. So the fact that there's no music really in this scene, that stands out to me.
It works here too because it's not. There's no score, but what you do have is the crackle of the fire.
Yeah.
Because they're both sitting on each side of their little campfire there. And again, it just goes to add to the scene. I think that if there was music, I think it would have taken away from it a little bit. Honestly, you don't need to build up that drama. And I think they might have planned to use music at one point, but seeing how they acted it out and the looks they gave each other, it wasn't necessary at all. Like they told that story perfectly. The editing, the looks, the writing.
Absolutely.
In case you haven't noticed, I love this scene.
No, hey, talk about it all you want.
One thing I will say before you move on, Let me know when you're about to move on.
Actually, I was about to move on to my next thing, so please feel free.
Sawyer says Sawyer drinks to voting Democrat. Does that affect your view of him at all as your favorite character, or one of your favorite characters?
No, not at all.
Just curious. No need to elaborate. I just wanted to point that out.
No, wait. However, though, did he drink to voting Democrat or did he drink to voting? Because she says, I never voted,
No,
and then he drinks.
no. I'm pretty sure he drank to voting Democrat,
Okay.
and she comments with that she never even bothered to vote.
Okay. Either way, doesn't bother me. Okay, so before we move on, do you have anything else you want to add to your favorite scene? Because I don't want to take any time away from you for that.
No, I think we wrapped that up pretty good.
And we see the opening flashback in a more dreamlike sequence this time with the boar instead of Sawyer's father.
You know, it's again adding a little humor to the situation.
Yeah.
'Cause he kind of left it off on a nasty point there, and a little admission of murder on both sides. So bring it back, and you got boar's feet under the bed, give you something to laugh at.
And then I have just it makes me laugh every time, and it's skipping around a little bit in the particular scene, but the fact that the boar only goes after Sawyer's stuff. It ate all of his food. We find out, and a little bit later, it took his shirt out of his bag just to pee on it. Like that's just hilarious to me. I love that.
Yeah, it's funny, and it always gets a laugh out of me. Is it very plausible? No, but again, it's played for comedic effect, and I like it.
And then I have the fact that Locke stumbles in, and he says, "I saw your trail and whatever."
He stumbles in, and he more as pops in. He says, I think he actually used that word. Figured I'd pop in and say hi. Like it's like your old Uncle John coming to visit.
I do have, though, that it makes me laugh when Sawyer, Kate says something about the boar being attracted to his cologne. And he's like, I don't wear cologne. And she's like, yes, you do. And he just he takes a giant pause. And then he's just like, well, whatever. Like,
it's kind of like, it says a lot without saying too much. And it's like, okay, you're all out on the island. I'm sure none of you are smelling very good. So Sawyer found himself a little cologne. He might be giving himself a little spritz here and there, try to make himself smell not quite as bad as everybody else. And for some reason, he's ashamed to admit it. It says a lot without saying too much.
Yeah. Then I have that Locke tells the story about his sister dying and how the mother thought that a random dog was the sister,
which kind of encompasses the theme of the episode pretty well. It's going to get into Sawyer's head now, just more, and it always was funny to me. Like, did Locke know what was going on? Is he just playing mind games with Sawyer now? Is he having a little fun with it the same way that Kate was? But I believe his story, but it's definitely convenient that he picks this time to tell it,
Right. I do have the fact that Kate asks if everything that he's saying was true, that the dog really was his sister. And he just starts where he's like, well, that'd be silly. Like,
yeah. And another good scene, another good piece of writing here. But again, he says it doesn't matter what the truth is. It's just what his mother believed.
Right.
And now he's putting it in Sawyer's head. Like, okay, I think Sawyer already had it in his head, but it's just reinforcing the point now.
Well, yeah, I think Sawyer, because he definitely has this look in his eye where he's just like, yeah, all right, that makes sense,
Mm-hmm. He's definitely relating. He's relating to that in the same way I related to I Never.
Right. And then we see him in the flashback approach the shrimp truck. And I wrote in my notes.
I have a question.
Okay.
do they have shrimp trucks in Australia? I mean, as far as what I heard, they call them prawns, first of all, so it wouldn't be called a shrimp truck necessarily down under. But shrimp trucks are pretty common in Hawaii, which makes sense. They filmed in Hawaii. I saw quite a few shrimp trucks while in Hawaii, but do they have them in Australia?
I don't know. I
Or is
mean, I
that
know.
just like
I think it's
somebody
just
taking
because. Yeah, I think it's just because they're like, oh, well, they have a lot of shrimp there, so it makes sense that an American might go and be like, let me open a shrimp truck.
Right, yeah, makes sense. Old Frank bringing a little bit of America down there. Whatever. Doesn't
Um,
matter. Moving on.
I do have in my notes that I have a I don't know if I want to call it a humorous story, but a little anecdote about the shrimp truck when we were in Hawaii. Uh, when we were making our reservations and everything, and they were like, we're going to go to an actual shrimp truck and all this stuff and make, you decide what you want to eat. I am not I think I've maybe only had shrimp like 3 times in my entire life. I'm not really a big.
Yeah.
I actually started eating seafood a few months before I went to Hawaii because I'm just like, oh well, I'm going to Hawaii. It's gonna be like all fish and whatever. And boy, was I wrong. But I figured a lot of things were gonna be like seafood related. So I'm like, I guess I better get into eating seafood. And I'll eat like cod or sway or things like that now. But not big on the shrimp. And I know that everybody there and back home was making fun of me because when I put in my order at the shrimp truck, I got a hot dog.
Yeah. And I obviously wasn't there for that moment, but we did go to get some seafood a couple days after that, and you wanted no parts of it. I think we ended up stopping at a Roy Rogers for you.
Oh, that's
or
right.
a
I totally forgot
or a
about that.
Popeyes. It was Roy Rogers or Popeyes. After I had some of the most delicious ahi tuna I've ever had in my life, and I can't wait to get back to have more, probably every day. And you wanted no parts of it, and
I
we
forgot
ended up
about that.
stopping for chicken, fast food chicken. I was so disappointed. You're eating some of this stuff next time. Damn it, it's delicious.
I forgot. I mean, I remember we went like because I know there is that picture of us. That was the day we trekked to the church and all that stuff. That was I remember there is that picture of us at the seafood place, but I forgot that we went somewhere else afterwards because I was being too whiny.
Well, I think we stopped and you got like 2 bottles of water. You're like, oh, well, this is all I'm going to have today. And we all kind of felt bad. Like we just stuffed our faces and, you know, you were clearly hungry. So we didn't mind stopping so much. I just wish you would have had what we had because trust me, it was good. Oh, no, seafood, people. It's a little bit off the beaten path out of in Waikiki. Best poke I've ever had in my life. Go there. Trust me. I probably shouldn't have said that because now if everybody starts going there, they might run out before I get there.
Well, like I said, this time when I go back, I'm gonna be, trying different things. I'm gonna try to put the OCD and the germophobia and all that kind of stuff out of my head. I'm gonna try being the key word, but I am going to try to do all that
I
stuff.
remember that too.
That's I will I want to try new things while I'm there, and I guess if you're gonna tackle me into the sand, I guess I better voluntarily try some seafood with you.
Only with your permission, which you've already given to me now and you can't take back. So
um, but yeah, I totally forgot about that. Thank you for calling me out on the podcast again.
it's kind of what I do. And it's not just you. Don't take it personal.
I have Sawyer says he's from Tennessee, but I thought we established later that he's from Jasper, Alabama. Isn't that right?
Jasper, Alabama sounds familiar. And I know Josh Holloway himself is from Georgia, so all this geography kind of gets confusing, especially when you're dealing with a con man who may or may not be telling you the truth at any given time.
Right. That was how in my mind, that was kind of how I explained it away. And the fact that he also says James when the guy asks him for his name. And at this point in the series, the non spoiler side is saying, like every time Kate says a different name, it's like, okay, well, which thing is her real name? And so now this, with James, the non-spoiler side of me goes, oh, well, what, we know it's not Sawyer, but what is it really? And of course, we know that really it is James. So I thought that was interesting that he, in this instance, decided to use his real name.
Yeah, he gave up his real name at the same time that he's on the verge of killing a man. Not sure that's the best move, but it is the first time we hear him as James, correct?
I believe so. Which
I believe
I
so
do
too.
I do have to point this out because I didn't point it out because I didn't think about it in the episode. I want to say raised by another, where Hurley is, he gets the manifest off of Sawyer and whatever. And because I was too focused on the fact that he says that line to Locke, which, Jorge Garcia says that he made up, or not says the line to Locke, but after Locke, where he's just like, oh, I know I just talked to you, but I need to get away from that guy. Um, I remember reading somewhere online, and I notice it every time, but I always forget to point it out, the fact that he would have had to find out Sawyer's real name at that point as well, because the manifest of the plane wouldn't say Sawyer, right?
Yeah, yeah. Would most certainly say James Ford. However, he get it from Sawyer? Am I recalling that correctly?
Yes, he
Did
did.
Sawyer have it?
Yes.
Okay, so let's say, for the sake of argument, Sawyer saw it first and read the list and said, if they asked, okay, this is my real name. Could have picked somebody, there were however many people on that flight. Most of them didn't survive. Yeah, this dead guy, that name, that's me. For the sake of argument, we'll say that's how it is, if he didn't want to give up James Ford right then and there. But again, this is another one of those things where we get into character motivation versus writer motivation, where
Right.
they probably wanted to keep you in the dark just a little bit longer about what his real name was and give the internet something to talk about.
Fair enough. I have that he couldn't pull the trigger though when he's talking to what's Frank? That's his name, right?
Frank Duckett.
Yes.
Yeah, and again, there was a little foreshadowing by my man Lawrence there. Um, you find out who you are. Who's behind that trigger,
Right.
whether you can actually pull it or not. And he is. It is mentioned that he's not the killing type. I think both by Hibbs. I think it might have been mentioned more than once, actually, if memory serves. But at the time, it sure looks like they were right.
But see now, just moments ago, in the I never thing, he drank with the, oh, I never killed a man. And because it's something that he did drink for that. So we know at some point, obviously we know, but we know at some point that he does, he did kill someone.
Yep, and it's building that suspense because you think it's going to happen right then and there, but no, he has to go and be talked into killing somebody by Christian Shepherd.
Yes, I have in the bar. He's drinking and meets a crazy old man who misplaced his wallet, and it's Christian Shepherd.
Yeah, which again, this leads to another one of my favorite scenes. Not in this episode, but we do get a little foreshadowing of that scene that I'm referring to with Jack and Sawyer down the road.
Yes, it says very much teased at the end of this episode.
Yes, yeah, it is. Yeah. And it's just funny to me, Christian says we're in hell. About being down in Australia. And that's, again, I really think at this point they were finding their groove and knowing their audience. that was out there talking and forming all these theories about the show, and they're just playing with us. They're playing with our emotions, with Christian saying, "Oh, we're in hell."
And then everybody thought, yeah.
Right.
Um,
So
Now it's funny because in the episode with Esteban, the original episode with Esteban, the White Rabbit episode, he talks, and we got into a little bit of a discussion there about how in the scene with Jack and the hotel manager or whatever he is, when Jack is looking for Christian, and he mentions the fact that he didn't take his wallet with him, no one would have rented him a car in his condition, and how everybody always wanted answers to questions, and it's little things like that you don't realize you do get answers to, such as in this episode where he says, "Oh, I seem to have misplaced my wallet," and that's obviously a callback to that previous episode. We find out at a later point how he did get around if a concierge wouldn't get him a car rental. And so, like, even though people say oh, well, they didn't answer this question, or I wasn't satisfied with this, Esteban and I talked about how it's little things like that, questions that you didn't realize you may have wanted the answer to, that end up making you feel better, like when you go back and you think about the fact that there is that connection, or that question does get answered.
absolutely, and I was going to mention that, the little things like that. It does beg the question, however, why is he sitting at a bar just getting drunk? Is he just is his plan now to just beg for drinks from whoever walks in if he doesn't have a wallet at all? It does beg that question a little bit, but I'm not going to dwell on it too much. I do appreciate the effort in the callback and the effort to explain, but I do enjoy this scene again because not only Christian does unwittingly talk Sawyer into murdering a man, but it also comes up big time later. And also, I don't think you're a baseball guy, but he does mention being a Red Sox fan, and that's why the Sox will never win the series, which they hadn't at that point, or at the point the show started. Eventually did in epic fashion, which I loved because not so much a Red Sox fan as I am a Yankee hater. So I loved seeing that at the time, and I do have the connection with my Boston brethren from my Patriots fanhood. So that's always a nice little sweet spot for me. Plus, as mentioned earlier, the girl that introduced me to this show was a Red Sox fan. So,
no lie, I actually have on here the fact that I'm not a sports guy, but I know you are, and I was going to ask you about that because I know it's brought up later. Someone mentions it to Jack about the fact that the Red Sox won the World Series. I didn't know when it was because I know the timeline in the show is very different from the real world timeline at a certain point. But he meant, it's mentioned that it happened recently, but I think by that point a couple years had passed. So I wasn't sure in the timeline with the episode airing versus when it actually happened in real life, how close together they were.
It was very close. From the very first episode of Lost to the Sox actually winning was a little more than a month.
So by the time the episode aired, they had already won.
They had already won. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But again, these events are taking place September 2004. They didn't win until I don't know if it was late October or very early November 2004.
Okay. But no, I really did. I had in my notes, I'm like, I'm not a sports guy, but I know you are. So please, fill me in on that one.
Yep. And like I said, it's not so much a Red Sox fandom. I am a Phillies fan. I'm a Philly guy, a Phillies fan. Despite my Patriots fanhood, I've been a Phillies fan all my life from my grandmother growing up in the 80s. Kind of adopted the Patriots in the 90s just because didn't want to be an Eagles fan. So I know some people look at that as kind of weird, but anybody around here who's not a Phillies fan, I'm judging you a little bit. And just hatred of the Yankees, it's a common thing. If you're not a Yankee fan, you hate the Yankees. So,
okay.
Given all that, very, very much enjoyed the Red Sox references. Kind of makes me like Jack a little more.
Thank you for the sports knowledge, and I really do mean that because I had no, like I said, I knew that at some point it happened because they make the joke about it later, but no clue.
Yeah, and knowing at least a little bit most of the people you've had on the podcast, I'm going to say I'm probably the best person to comment on that. I don't think you've had many sports fans on here, at least not that I've seen. So glad that I could recap that a little for you.
Absolutely. Um,
Did you notice before we move on? Christian called Sawyer cowboy.
um, I did not notice that.
Yeah, the first thing he says to him is, uh, I don't know, I forget what the contact like, or is, let's just say for the sake of argument, what are you drinking? What are you drinking, cowboy? Says something to him like that, and I don't know if that's because he noticed the southern accent or if they're saying um, that's just a nickname, a general nickname that Christian used throughout his life, which would explain, because I know you went into this a little bit, all the best cowboys have daddy issues, and you were kind of debating where the term cowboy came from.
Right. Okay.
Now,
Oh, all right.
yeah,
I never made that connection.
yeah. So, go back and check. So, Sawyer is called cowboy by Christian. And, Sawyer obviously has specific nicknames for certain people, but he also has some general nicknames that he uses, like Haas. Like, hey,
Right.
Haas, what's going on? Like, my father does that. My father uses Haas or Sport or Buddy, something like that. So if that's just a general nickname that Christian uses, that kind of answers the question that you had previously of where the term cowboy came from.
Okay. Well, I know one of them that Christian uses is he does say kiddo quite a bit because he not only Jack, but I know he calls other characters that he interacts with kiddo at some points.
Yeah, he definitely uses it for Jack, and I've adopted that for one of my nieces actually. Shout out to my niece.
Um. Okay, so I do have the fact that you said about the Red Sox thing, and Christian definitely is dropping little hints, which Sawyer brings back in the at the end of this episode and in the future episode when they have him and Jack have the full on discussion, but he says about the fact that he's a chief of surgery. Christian says that he has a son that's a great man, and I do have the fact that he doesn't say a single bad thing about Jack, which is very classy on his part, and it also shows the differences I think between them because Jack, if somebody else is talking bad about his father, like in the White Rabbit episode, he's like, the guy says about the fact that like pretty much he calls his father a drunk, and he's like, he is a chief of surgery because like no one else can talk bad about his dad but him. But like Christian never, in this instance, never says a bad thing about his son.
Yeah, and it's probably because he knows he was wrong. Do I approve of Jack being a snitch? Not really. Was it the right thing to do? Yeah, probably. So I think Christian realizes that,
Right.
and it's at the end of the day, that's your son, and I think it's a lot harder for a father to talk bad about his son, especially to other people, random people, strangers, whoever, than it is for the kid to say something bad about their parent. Like everybody goes through teenage years, and there's usually a little conflict there. But in the end of the day,
Yeah.
more often than not, they love you.
I have that he talks about the fact that he can't pick up the phone and call his son because he's weak, and then he pretty much tells Sawyer, go out and ease your suffering, and then he uses himself as like a cautionary tale because he's like, you don't want to end up like me.
Yeah, pretty much. And what's his name? John Terry is the name of the actor,
Yes.
right? doesn't exactly play a convincing drunk to me. You know, and maybe he was sobering up because he was broke and he was just sitting there waiting to beg somebody for a drink, and that's the implication. But I've been around a lot of drunk people. He didn't seem that drunk to me. Just saying.
Fair enough. Okay, I have Saeed talking to Charlie about his stress, and he tells Charlie about an incident in Iraq and how killing someone will be with you for the rest of your life. And he tells Charlie that he isn't alone. And of course, that's very good in this episode. Sawyer isn't around to hear that discussion, but it definitely works with the theme of this episode overall.
Oh, absolutely. It's a nice piece of writing there because not only does it apply with Charlie and what just happened to Charlie, but it also applies to what's going on currently. Because you got to think they had just these past two episodes they kind of dropped everything but the main story. Like they aren't even considering getting off the island at this point. You know what I mean? Like it's not even mentioned, and until the very end of this episode, you see the first piece of the raft being built, and that's the first time you think, oh yeah, there's all this other stuff going on at the same time. Both these episodes, Homecoming and Outlaws, were both very story centric, aside from very few little scenes like that.
Right. I have Sawyer mentions how one day the whole island will be a shopping complex. And knowing what we know about the island, that makes me laugh.
Yeah, I I made that note as well. Even though he may have voted Democrat before, he's got a little capitalist in him, wanting to see all tore down and build a mall,
Right.
maybe even an auto mall.
And then I have that Kate finds the wallow and Sawyer takes a piglet to use as bait, and she doesn't like that, and she hits him and leaves him alone.
Yeah, who knew Kate was a PETA member?
Well, let's see. She eats bacon, then says she doesn't eat meat. So I don't know where she falls on that, but I think I could understand. I mean, as much as I eat meat and everything, I think I can understand that because like that's not the thing that he was having the issue with.
Yeah. I think she got a little irrationally upset because it's not like he was going to hurt the baby pig or the baby boar.
Right.
Yeah, it struck me as a little awkward. Like she just got, and I've experienced this before, just irrationally upset at something that he wasn't even thinking twice about.
Yeah. I have in a flashback Sawyer says Sawyer and shoots the man. I always wonder if he shot him because he reacted to him saying Sawyer. Because if so, my argument is that I think he would have reacted to any noise because he thought he was alone.
Yeah. He was shooting him regardless at that point. I think he got his pep talk, he got his liquid courage, and he went back out there, and he wasn't going to walk away twice. So regardless of what he did, when he said Sawyer, it was on.
Right. And then we find out that Hibbs set up the whole thing. The shrimp guy wasn't Sawyer, and our Sawyer just killed a man that he had no qualms with.
Yep. And this is where we find out when the whispers struck, they said it'll come back around, and this is where we find out that that's what old Frank Duckett here says to Sawyer right before he dies. Which saying that, last words of a dying man, didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But it was a recurring theme of the episode. What do you think it'll come back around really meant?
I think, okay, if I had to put it into a perspective like that, I would think the guy owed money to Hibbs, who was either a con man or, a loan shark or something, not on the up and up. And so if he was able to con Sawyer into shooting this guy, then chances are somebody at some point may be able to, like maybe one day Sawyer will be on the other end of getting a gunshot, and he has no, like, the his shooter will have no idea. Maybe that's what Frank was thinking in that moment. You know what I mean? Because pretty
Yeah,
much
yeah, kind of
there's no, I don't want to say
his.
there's no honor amongst thieves, but pretty much, if you are that kind of, like I said, a loan shark or a con man or something like that, you pretty much don't trust anybody but yourself. So you're going to try to get somebody else to do your dirty work for you, I would assume. So, maybe he thought that one day somebody will take out Sawyer, whether they know why or not.
Yeah, kind of saying like, you're going to pay for this. It might not be me who makes you pay, but it will come back around to you. I get that.
That's what I would think.
Yeah, yeah, I can go with that. We'll roll with that one.
And then I have Sawyer walking back through the jungle. He sees the boar, and he has the opportunity to shoot it, but he doesn't. And I don't remember if he saw Kate before that or if he looks over at her afterwards. But she has this look where I think she's a little proud of him for like moving on. But I wonder if he saw, like, no, regardless, if he saw her and just didn't do it because he saw how upset she was with him already, and he was just like, it's not worth risking, her just to kill this stupid boar.
Uh, I
Or if he
I
truly
think he
just
had
moved
just
on.
yeah, I think he had kind of gotten over it at that point, and the fact that he was even able to find it, uh, I think he wasn't conscious of her being there and watching it first. Yeah, I'm not giving her that much credit.
Okay.
Yeah,
I have that Claire is watching people on the beach, and as you mentioned moments ago, we see that Michael's raft is coming along nicely. Because, like you said, they kind of just dropped that for this episode and the homecoming episode. Everything else that was going on, and so it is nice to see that it's, people are still focused on other things.
yep. Yeah, it's very contained within up to this point. Both these last two episodes were very much contained within themselves, focused on one thing, and there's other stuff going on. So it's good that they threw that in there. It's nice to see.
I have that Charlie approaches Claire and offers to take a walk with her now because, he buried Ethan and, Saeed gave him that pep talk. And so that I thought that was a nice moment between the two of them.
Yeah, and a lot of moving on going on here in the last couple minutes.
And then Sawyer and Jack in the jungle. There's still tension, but Sawyer returns the gun because Kate asked. And this is where Jack mentions the same Red Sox line. And Sawyer realizes the connection, but he doesn't tell Jack any of the stuff that was going on. But he does hear that Christian is dead. And it pretty
He
much
finds out Christian's dead. He puts it all together, like he knows at this point that was Jack's dad. Doesn't necessarily. He already gave him the gun back and gave him that satisfaction, and maybe didn't want to dig any deeper at the moment. He does kind of shoot him a look, and it builds a suspense. Like, this is one of the things. Like, this is going to come back, and when it does, it's pretty great.
Absolutely, but might you say it'll come back around?
Yeah, there you go.
That was pretty
As
much
with
my
most
last
things
note.
on this show, not all, but most. Um, yeah, we already discussed he got called James the first time, and this was the first time there were no Boone or Shannon in the episode. I did see that in doing my research.
Oh, okay. I
Aside from that,
didn't even think of that.
yeah, that's all I got. Again, very, very good episode in my opinion. I picked, or not I picked, but I was given the opportunity to comment on 2 good episodes here, season 1 of Lost. I appreciate you having me on. Had a lot of fun.
Thank you. I'm so glad. So I think that just about wraps us up here on this episode of Lost with Friends. Thank you once again, Kevin, for being on. You are absolutely welcome back anytime. I know you said a Hurley episode, so I will make sure to keep
Definitely.
that in mind. If anybody wants to keep talking with you, is there any way they could contact you on social media?
Yep, pretty much all across any social media at Seventh Power. Spelled out the words Seventh Power. Replace the V with a 7.
Okay. And that'll do it for us. So I will end with the traditional thank you, namaste, and good luck. Hey, everybody, it's Paul, your host for most of the shows on the goes. Okay, that was terrible. But hopefully that episode you just listened to wasn't. So if you enjoyed it, how about you click that little like button, maybe give us a subscribe, and share it to your friends. Thanks.